Rostermania is here. No, but seriously, today we're just gonna go through all of the roster news that's happened, and I'll probably do this like every 2-3 weeks, maybe every month, right? Whenever enough kind of news drops of Rostermania stuff going on, that's what we'll do. We're gonna take a look at this. This is on the Valorant subreddit, the Rostermania tracker and mega thread. So this is basically just actual official announcements or reports from a well-regarded source. So this is kind of, not rumors or stuff like that, like things that are either very likely to happen or have actually definitely happened, right? And we're just going to go through it today. It's probably won't be the most visually interesting video you're ever going to watch. Maybe a bit more of a podcast kind of feel to this one. But yeah, we're just going to go through all of the different things that have happened throughout the leagues and talk about it. So let's dive in, and we'll start with Americas at the top here. We got C9. Allow Vanity to explore options. Not a massive shock. C9 were a weird team last year. They actually started very well, but then kind of really trailed off towards the end of the season. Vanity, I'm sure at some point we'll be back on C9 because that seems to be the way that Cloud9 run their organization. Then we got some coaching changes. Mike leaves 100 Thieves. Juvenile, who was on LEV, is looking for a team. We'll get to that later on. And Bonkar to NRG. Now, Bonkar was one of perhaps the most buzz hype kind of coaches out there, and yeah, going to NRG, that'll be interesting to see. You've got kind of like Bonkar is kind of the whispers are, this mastermind like kind of player. Obviously then you've got FNS. Be interesting to see how they meld together and kind of create their system, whatever it's going to be, but I'm excited for it. Crashies is an unrestricted free agent, so most of you will probably be aware of this one as well. And this is the thing with going through this, I actually forgot some of these things that happened a while ago. So Crashies is an unrestricted free agent. You would assume that Crashies probably can find a space still, I would think, in tier 1. Mazzino is a restricted free agent as well, and we talk about a limited number of spots, and this often comes up particularly when people talk about NA. But what UNA people don't realize is that if you're a LATAM player, there are almost no spots, right? So if Mazzino is leaving LEV, which, I mean, you could talk about the decision in and of itself, maybe is a little strange. With Mazzino, his play towards the end of the season was pretty good. But where do you go if you're Mazzino, right? You have Crew, where you were before. You could go back to Crew, but those are the only two LATAM teams. So if you're not going to go on them, and obviously Mazzino, they spoke English this year, so I assume his English is pretty good. So he probably could fit onto other teams as well, English-speaking teams, if he wanted to. Sadek leaves Loud. We'll get to that later on. Sen part ways with Drew Spark. Heat is a restricted free agent. See, this is the kind of thing that, like, this just missed me. I didn't even see this, but Heat obviously had a great end to the season, right? Or like middle end to the season when he joined Crew. This one is a bit of a surprise. Heat obviously had some problems the prior season, right, with getting kind of benched halfway through the season. Things look like that might be kind of the end of his career in Tier 1. It comes to Crew, has a kind of resurgence, is playing Initiator as well. So I think if you're one of those Brazilian teams, like Heat probably is going to be a decent option as an Initiator player, better than what they've been putting out the past couple of years. Verno to sign with NRG. Verno obviously was kind of the, we talked about Bonkar being the kind of, prize coach. Well, Verno was one of the prize players from Tier 2 NA, and he's going to NRG. NRG, I think people are sleeping on them a little bit. I think there isn't that much buzz, that much hype, and maybe when the season rolls around there will be for an FNS-led team again, but I feel like it's a bit more subdued. When we were coming into last season, NRG were kind of like the hype team, right, that everyone was wanting to see. Now they seem to be a bit more quiet, but actually I think that they if they aren't better than the NRG were last year, then they're in a lot of trouble. They definitely should be better than NRG were, but we'll see if they can kind of crack the top 3, make it to internationals, that kind of stuff. Tens and Sassy retire. Obviously we know about this one, we don't need to go too deep on that. Zakin extends with Sen, no big shock here, but these last two are really the big ones. Jawgemo to G2. This is a very recent come out. Jawgemo to G2. I assume that this is to replace Icy. I don't know if that's confirmed, but that would be my assumption, just because of the roles and stuff. And obviously this is a crazy good team on paper now, right? G2, and obviously G2 were already, right, they were already a pretty good team, but Jawgemo adding in a world champion in there as well. It'll be interesting to see how Jawgemo, who I always kind of picture in my mind as kind of a kind of chaotic player, let's say, right? Kind of someone who might fit into like a Paper Rex type team. It'll be interesting to see how he fits into G2, right? And that very steady kind of, play as a pack, that kind of mentality, the pack herd mentality. You know, how will Jawgemo fit into that? Honestly, it might work even if he doesn't do that, right? Maybe G2 sometimes need that bit of flair, that bit of like craziness added into their game that Jawgemo will no doubt provide. I think it's a great signing for G2. Again, for these Ascension teams, right? Like, they need to be good. They need to make champs to stay in the league, right? But you're looking at this G2 roster right now and you're thinking, this is a team that should be, you know, that should be competing to getting into champs, and anything less than that, looking at this roster, would probably be a bit of an underachievement. And then this next one is as big, you know, if not bigger than Jawgemo. Aspas will leave LEV is a report. Again, these are just reports, they aren't official announcements, so maybe they're not true, right? But Aspas leaving LEV and apparently wants to go to an Asian team is what, you know, was kind of rumored in this report as well. Aspas leaving LEV I don't think is that big of a shock, to be honest. I think as soon as basically Noswa got replaced by Calm, and there was kind of, you know, rumblings that Aspas was really unhappy with that, and one of the main reasons, you know, he wanted to play on LEV is because maybe friends with Noswa or whatever, and then that guy gets replaced, not great. And I think the vibes on LEV were always a little strange, right? They were always strange, the vibes, even when they were doing well, it still felt a little strange. But from a LEV perspective, like, what do you do? Right, who are you gonna get? You know, maybe, I mean, you know, if they really, really want to go all in on Valvium, maybe you could get Durka or something, I don't know, to potentially try and replace Aspas. But, you know, not, there isn't gonna be many, you know, that can replace Aspas. And where does he go? If he does go to a Pacific team, that will be crazy good for Pacific, right? Like, to just bring in like a really mega superstar, you know, into your league. You know, I think he plays the game in Japanese, Aspas, so, you know, I think a lot of us are hoping like, oh, Zeta Division Aspas, that would be the coolest thing of all time, which would be the coolest thing of all time if that did happen. And, you know, you could just imagine the Japanese fans going crazy for something like that. EMEA. This is a report here. Gorilla, I didn't even know this one, but must have happened a while ago, to leave Vitality for Koi. So I don't know if this is his contract running out, or if this Koi poaching Gorilla from Vitality. I don't know, but we'll see what happens there. Obviously, Durka, we already know. We'll see where he goes. He is a restricted free agent, which obviously, you know, means there's probably a hefty buyout. So the teams that he could go to is actually probably more limited, because it's probably only going to be teams who are willing to spend a pretty penny. Takas has been allowed to explore options by Gentlemates. Again, these kind of Ascension teams are gonna need, you know, they need to win, they need to be good, right? So don't be surprised if the Ascension teams, even midway through the season as well, are making a lot of moves to try and, you know, keep their head above water, essentially. Zippa and Artist Sugetsu are all restricted free agents. Again, you would think that these three, again, they are restricted, so that might, you know, depending on how big those buyouts are, could limit them in terms of actual places that they could play. But you know, you would assume that these three are at least tier 1 players, right? They're tier 1 level players at the very least. Will be interesting to see where they end up. Same for Team Liquid, of course, Yampy, Mystic, and Enzo. Again, Yampy will be an interesting to see, you know, what are Yampy's stocks like? I really don't know. You know, what role do you want Yampy to play? You know, it's a bit of a tough one for Yampy, to be honest. Hero released from Fnatic. Stoxo is an unrestricted free agent. Stoxo I actually thought had a decent season last season overall. I thought he looked okay. So again, we're just looking at other names of like maybe tier 1 level, right? Like again, very competitive. Mini leaves Fnatic, Nuki, Fatinho, and Huddy are all free agents as well. So Giants going for a big kind of rebuild. But again, 3 players who you would think like, you know, this is 3 players that are tier 1 level players, right? Like they don't look out of place in tier 1. But again, there's like a lot of people that you can say that about, so it's going to be like, who's going to make it? Someone's probably not going to make it, to be honest. And with that, Westside is set to join Giants as well. So Westside was an East Surge player for Diamond, I think. You know, decent player from what the little that I saw, but obviously we'll have to see. But, you know, some of these tier 2 players, like we saw this year with, you know, Team Heretics or whatever, turn out to be better than just good. So we'll see. Gokid to coach Gentlemates. So he was the guy who was the LEV coach at the start of the season when things weren't going so well for LEV. So this to me kind of feels like this is your last chance. A lot of pressure because, again, Ascension teams, you have to win. Probably your last chance at tier 1, to be honest, at this point. So we'll see how that goes. Thomas E. Shin and Magnum bench from Calming Core. Again, 3 players who you would assume like tier 1 level players. Question mark, right? Like, again, we've got so many of those players. It's like probably not everyone is gonna, you know, get in with the tier 2 talent coming up as well. Yeah, I was a bit surprised. Obviously, we'll get to Kami Core a bit later as well. I was a bit surprised by Thomasy and Shin because I think that, you know, they're pretty good. If there is talent out there, right? Like if you're a tier 1 team, you pick up Tomazi or Shin, like could you be pretty good? Yeah, you could be pretty good. Cloud extends his contract with Giants, makes sense, right? And again, you could make, you know, I was thinking about Giants, like, okay, you've got Cloud, that makes sense. Keep your good players. This is what, you know, how to run an org, in my opinion, in Valorant. Like, if you've got a really good player, keep them. And you could build, like, I was thinking about, like, what if they built just, like, a Russian-speaking... I mean, they got Westside, so I don't think he can speak Russian, but I was thinking, like, what if you had Cloud, and then you bring in, like, Sagetsu and Durka, right? And, you know, you just go for some, like, crazy Russian-speaking team. It could be interesting, right? But I doubt they're going to go that way. Emil has gone from Team Liquid, and Lohan has come in to replace. Lohan was the coach of Job Life, who were the French team in Ascension. Don't really know too much about this one, to be honest. We'll have to see how that goes. Boo extends contract with Team Heretics, makes sense. Saish extends contract with Comical, makes sense. Hero to sign with Na'Vi. So Na'Vi are getting Hero from Fnatic. Which means that their team is Angel Shao Hero. I don't even know what the expectation will be for Na'Vi, to be honest, right? Do you expect them to be kind of middle of the pack? Do you expect them to still be fine at the very top with Angel Shao? I have no idea. Faded is going to coach Vitality. Again, with the coaches, it's tough to know. I think Faded was the TSM coach. So we'll see how that goes. Sadak and Aves to Kami Core. Now, Sadak to Kami Core. This is perhaps one of the craziest signings, like most out of the blue, unpredictable signings I think I've ever seen in Valorant. There was heavy rumors that Sadak was going to go to Crew. He's gone to Kami Core. It feels strange. Obviously, with Sadak coming to Kami Core, that means that Narrate must leave Kami Core because you can only have one import player, which obviously Sadak now is. So Narrate is off elsewhere, it seems. So their team is now Aves, who I'll admit I don't know too much about. Sadak and Martine. Obviously, they still have their coaching staff in place as it was last season. It's going to be interesting. And I think that, you know, Kami Core, Champs is in Paris. They're probably looking at this season as like, you know, let's go all, like if you're gonna go all in as Kami Core, you would think that this would be the year to do it, right? Like Champs is in Paris, make Champs do well in Champs, the crowd will be going crazy, it will look great for you, you know, all the things that you could show, you know, all the clips that you could have from doing well at Champs in Paris would be crazy for Kami Core. The expectations will be pretty high, I think. Robbie BK to join Gentle Mates. So again, another kind of like, you know, Ascension player getting picked up, going to Gentle Mates. We'll see. You know, again, like these Ascension teams, you know, gotta make it work. There's a lot of pressure on these players to do well. Milan has gone to Fnatic. Milan's been around. This is the tallest coaching staff, I think, in the history of anything, to be honest, because both Elmer Buddy and Milan are very, very, very tall. And BBL Pora is a restricted free agent. So, I mean, look, we looked at those Pacific players, you know, in tier 2, and I was thinking, like, hey, if you're BBL, right, like, get an academy team and just sign those Pacific young players. Onto Pacific. Laz retired. This happened a while ago. Legend of the game. Interesting to see what Zeta Division do. Maybe they replace him with Aspas. Who knows? Basically, all of Bleed, you know, becoming restricted free agents. Interesting to see what comes of Zest and Yay. Zest, obviously, definitely tier 1 potential. Yay, we'll see what happens. Darion as well, I think, you know, proved himself to be pretty good as well. I completely forgot that Sire Player and Rossi were both let go of T1. Right? So again, whether you're... I mean, anywhere, really, right? Like, it could be Pacific, you know, but obviously Sire's played in NA before. Obviously, Rossi is from NA. So, you know, if you're an NA team as well, potentially looking, you know, at Sire or Rossi, you know, you could do, essentially. Secret part ways with NDG. Elmi Moore is a restricted free agent as well. Yoran and Hero Run are restricted free agents. So, Zeta Division are going for kind of a, you know, we're having to replace 3 players, essentially, it looks like, you know, with the last retirement, and then the 2 newer players that they picked up didn't really work out very well at all. So we'll see. Bulb, who was the coach of Paper Rex, has left, and Juvenile is becoming the coach of Global Esports. We'll see what kind of roster they can put together. But as I said, like, you know, you look at some of these names, like, if Global do just go for kind of a, you know, non-Indian roster, like if they just go for like a kind of whatever you want kind of roster, you know, there's some decent players that, you know, I mean, let's start with Zest and Sire Player, right? Like, there you go. There's 2 good players. I mean, build a Korean roster if you want to. And then finally, in China, not as much here. Flicks of Wolves. I'll be interested to see what Wolves do next season. But yeah, we'll have to see what Wolves do. And Crystal and Fade leave Lai Gaming, who won Ascension. Now, Crystal, speaking of players who, and I might do a video on Crystal, to be honest. if you're an EMEA team, like, you pick up this guy, right? He's kind of getting screwed as kind of all of the kind of, like, you know, East Russians, like the people who live in like Vladivostok and whatever, you know, on the far east side of Russia. They kind of get screwed because they're counted as imports in Asia, but they don't in EMEA. So if you're an EMEA team, you know, come and pick up Crystal. But yeah, this is kind of just all the news. And as I say, we'll probably do this like every couple weeks or something, you know, just going through kind of, you know, the news essentially of what's happening with Rostermania. So yeah, this will be kind of a bi-weekly, tri-weekly kind of thing that we'll do here on the channel.